All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Mentoring at a Distance, Building Student Connections at Penn State World Campus. We're very excited to have you, so thank you so much for joining us. Just a reminder that we are recording this presentation, so folks can watch this at a later time. Sorry, I'm still okay, thank you for your help, letting folks in. So today's presentation is in a Zoom meeting format, right? This format was chosen to encourage audience participation. So if you are able to, we would love it if you would turn your camera on. This way we can have a more interactive session. So thank you for that. Today's Q&A and chat features are available in the Hoover platform. So as you know, this is a separate window than this particular session in Zoom. And we will closely monitor this throughout this session. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to also engage in the community activities in Hoover. So thank you for that. We also have closed captioning. So as a reminder, you can enable closed captioning at the bottom of your Zoom window at any time. So thank you for that. Oh, I should also introduce myself. My apologies. My name is Tanya St. Pierre. I'm an assistant director in the Division of Undergraduate Studies, and I'm looking forward to this presentation. And with that being said, I will hand it over to the presenters to introduce themselves. So thank you so much.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. We're really excited to talk to you about some of the ways that we help students with mentoring at a distance at World Campus. That said, myself and the rest of the team are really looking forward to hearing what else what your experiences have been, and that sort of, we're hoping that we'll learn something as well as being able to share something. My name is Megan Fung. I'm the senior coordinator for Smart Track to Success, which is the program that we'll be discussing. You'll hear a little bit more in a second, but in a nutshell, Smart Track to Success is a first-year program for students who are at the beginning of their academic journey. We typically see a lot of adult learners at World Campus, so it's a program that's designed to help our historically marginalized students get a leg up and learn a lot of the things that they need to do to be successful. And we find mentoring is a big part of that. So I'm going to let the rest of my presentation team introduce themselves. Kim, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Megan. So my name is Kim Wiesner. I am a student success coordinator in academic development. I am also an academic coach, and I teach in the Smart Track to Success program. I'm excited to be here and learn.
And my name is Julie Fitzgerald. I'm the co-curricular program coordinator at Penn State World Campus Student Affairs. My role primarily focuses on service, leadership, and engagement programs for our World Campus students. And I, along with our graduate assistant, work with the mentor piece of it. So actually training mentors and working with the mentor matching and all of that. But I'm excited to be here and excited to learn from you all as well, and looking forward to the discussion.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tia Nickens. I'm the graduate assistant that helps pair mentors. I work with Julie a lot and work with the instructor side as well with trying to connect the dots. So excited to be here.
Thanks, everybody. And if you didn't get a chance, we do have some polls that we would invite you to fill out while you're listening to us. There shouldn't take you too long, but we're hoping to get a sense sort of what stage people are at with their mentoring journey. I took a look before the session, and it looks like a lot of people are trying to gather information about how to set up a mentoring program. We're hoping and curious to see sort of what you see as the opportunities, what you're hoping to do. So do share that in the chat. And then there's also a couple that are just sort of gathering everyone's collective sense about what mentoring means, the benefits, the challenges that we'll talk a little bit about in a second. To start off, this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about Smart Track and how the program works, and then we will do a little bit of talking about the logistics of how we work our mentoring program. And then we have a lot of student quotes and a lot of student voices to share with you about what students have seen as the benefits that we're hoping will prompt discussion and a lot of lively conversation about this really important topic. So I'm going to start my slide. So Smart Track to Success, as I said, is a first-year program. It's 2 semesters, and it really focuses on 4 key areas that we see as really ultimately are the key to retaining students who are first gen or historically marginalized. So we aim to foster student success through the really fundamental building blocks of how do you take notes in an online class? How do you transition to being an online learner if you're an adult student? We aim to maximize engagement through getting students connected to mentors, to support staff, to other individuals who can really make their time at Penn State a success for them. We also really try to connect students with the broader university, both through mentoring opportunities and also through educating them about what things are available, some of those informal connections through clubs and organizations, or more formally through other programs that we offer through student government and that kind of thing. And ultimately, this is all to increase retention and really help students feel like they belong at Penn State. In terms of our targeted populations, Smart Track to Success is an invite-only program. It is really targeted at first-year students with the less than 18 credits, which is especially a unique signifier at World Campus because we have a lot of students that bring in transfer credits. So this particular program is really aimed at students who have very limited time in college. Penn State is largely in a World Campus that has a lot of adult learners. So we are largely targeting adult learners, although we do occasionally, we're seeing more traditional age students. And then we're also really sort of attending to students who are historically marginalized. So first gen, underrepresented minority, Pell Grant recipients, students with a military affiliation, we also see a lot of, and this is a program that really supports them. In terms of what Smart Track consists of, probably the best connection, it's based on the past programs that are available at many of the other campuses when it was developed 6 years ago. And for our program, because we don't have the capacity to bring students to a campus early, to orient them in a summer bridge program kind of way, we aim to do that during their first year at World Campus. So they receive a $1,500 scholarship for their first 2 semesters. They take 2 non-credit courses, one each of those semesters, and they do also have the opportunity to connect with a mentor. That combination of resources as a collaboration between student affairs and academic success really aims to sort of bridge the gaps that we see, and it works in the way that our online students work. We have a rolling admission, so we don't really have we don't have a single class that comes in the summer. We're working with students all throughout the year. In terms of what the courses cover, this gives you a sense of sort of what we as staff and instructors are working with. We're talking about study strategies, note-taking, active reading, academic preparedness, having a growth mindset, all of the things that we need. And then also writing and technology. So orienting students to the fundamentals of what it means to write a paper. What's a thesis statement? How do you brainstorm? And also technology. How do you use all of the many technologies that shape the ecosystem of Penn State? In 102, there continues to be sort of study strategies, but the focus turns to that engagement. So we talk about student involvement, we talk about networking, we try to break down some of those at a distance barriers, because keep in mind, all of this is happening online through Canvas, through LinkedIn. And then we do a lot of work with self-reflection and goal setting, helping students to break down short-term goals, long-term goals, SMART goals, the things that will help drive them forward. In terms of the benefits, at least this is what we hope we see. We want students to develop stronger academic habits. We hope that they'll discover clubs and organizations relevant to them. We hope they'll build that support network, namely like learning how to ask for help and knowing who to talk to. We don't have a Buki campus. We don't have a building where all of our things reside. It's all on the website, all online. So we do a lot of time about talking about where do you go for help and who do you talk to. And then we talk a lot about professional skills training. How do you professionalize yourself and make those connections? In terms of the role that mentoring plays, mentoring is essential to the success of Smart Track. It gives that student voice, and these, to be clear, are peer-to-peer mentors. We're not talking about, we do have that staff voice, but these students are really, we pair upperclassmen with our first year students in order to give that sort of first person sort of experience of, this is how you succeed at the university. This is where I went. This is what I did. And we find that it's both sharing of success strategies builds affinity with the university, but it also sometimes supports both of them because they realize they're not alone. If you're pairing a mentor with someone, with a mentee who is an adult learner, a single mom, a military veteran, somebody who's working a full-time job and teaching and going to class, they start to see both, hey, I can help someone else. I've come so far. And also they're starting to see, I can do this because somebody else did this. So those are sort of my initial introduction into Smart Track. I have a lot more student quotes that we can talk about and go through, but at this point I did want to turn it over to Julie and Tia for a bit so that they can talk you through one of the really key components for us in this program that we have found is, how do you connect mentors and mentees, especially at a distance? We always say at Penn State, we don't have the motivation of food or free swag. At World Campus, we don't have that. And so we have to think really hard about how we build those connections, and Julie and Tia are essential to that process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. We can come back to some of the quotes for students, but I'm going to let you guys take over for a bit.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I think one of the important things, and we put in the handout section some practices and things that we've learned. For those of you that might be starting a program or thinking about starting a program, we've learned a lot over the years. We've been doing this 5 or 6 years, Megan. I'm trying to remember, but and we've refined our processes over time. And so what we've shared in that document are some of the things that we've learned over time in terms of recruiting mentors, pairing mentors, training of mentors, best communication strategies between mentors and mentees. All of these types of things have enabled us to make tweaks and to kind of develop the program and make it so that our mentees and our mentors are getting as much out of it and as they can. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback over the years, and it's been very helpful to get to where we are. And we continually meet as a team to kind of review and debrief each year of what we can do to get even better. And so that's one thing I would just encourage all of you, if you're thinking about starting a program or you're in a starting point, to know that it takes time to develop some of these practices. So I think in the interest of time, we shared this handout, and we want to make sure that we have some time to kind of get to any questions or discussion, opportunities to kind of learn from you all of what practices you have found, and have some robust discussion there. But basically, you know, some of the areas that we've outlined in terms of recruiting mentors, I think one of the main things in pairing is really trying to be as intentional as you can in identifying mentors from different backgrounds, and actually even having a larger pool than you might actually need so that you can more specifically match. I think one of the things that's been most successful is when we've had some sharing opportunities to match on a variety of different areas, such as you know, a discipline or a major, life circumstances, and those kinds of things. I know Tia is in regular contact with both mentors and mentees. I don't know if you want to speak to anything about that careful process of matching, and it's a very sort of labor intensive process, but it can be very rewarding when you've seen the output from that.
Yeah, so touching on the matching process a little bit, me and Julie have been trying to figure out, like, is there a way for us to do like kind of automatic? Because right now, essentially, we send them a form with a lot of different questions, like what are some things that interest you? What are your future career goals and stuff like that? What are you looking for in a mentor? And so essentially right now I'm hand matching them. So I'm going through looking at all the forms and seeing where they match. And so that is a little bit time consuming, yes, depending on how many mentors and mentees you have. But the good thing about that is that I can tell if it's going to be a good match from the beginning. And so like we've had a lot of like some of the quotes that we get a chance to go through. A lot of them have been talking about how it's really helpful to have someone in their major, because then they're discussing future classes or maybe a teacher that they took and how to study for a test. And then we also have people that are in military affiliation and like, oh, well, I got to see how they got to balance this at the same time. Or we have a lot of adult learners that have families. And so I try to match the people that are moms together, maybe single moms. So they have that in common. And so that is a really good part about this, is that it's very personalized to them with their match. And it gives them an opportunity to kind of see some of the things that they might not necessarily have as having someone that's very similar to them going through the same process, or even someone that's in the same age group. I really try my hardest to match them in the same age group. So usually we give them like, it's around 9-ish years of an age range. And so it's like 18 and younger is one too, because there are some adult learners that come and they're not necessarily, they graduated high school, but now what? And so it's really nice for them to have someone that's in the same age range. Like we have some that are over 50. I'm not going to match someone that's with a 22-year-old. And so that helps them too, because they're like, oh, okay. So like, how'd you navigate this process? I'm going back to school after years off. And so it's really just a sense of trying to match them with someone that they can be with, but also someone that has the same goals. So communication wise, we ask them like frequency, just to make sure they're not looking for someone that's talking to them every day, but it could be someone that they're talking once or twice a semester. So those are just little things about the matching process, I would say. And I am in contact with all of them. We have a Canvas page for them too. And so I will post like to match what the course is talking about that week for the mentees, so that the mentors have that in consideration when they're reaching out to them to talk to them about maybe resources or scheduling, or now we're at spring break. How do you get over getting out of the break and going back into the mindset? And so sometimes it is a little bit, like we find there is some disconnect. And so having me to be the person that connects them, I can contact the instructor and be like, hey, is the mentee still participating? Which was really helpful too.
And just to kind of offer further context, this is a process, as Julie says, is something that we've developed over several years. When we first started Smart Track, the expectation was that our second semester first year students would be mentoring the first semester students. And what we quickly realized is that many of these students are not ready yet. They have been out of, or at least they don't have the range of experiences that an upperclassman can offer. And a lot of them are still adjusting to classes, especially in sort of this world campus context where it's online. Many of them are adult learners. Many of them have the challenge potentially of being first gen, but also the challenge of they just haven't been in college or classes for years. And so for us, a lot of that connection and building it relates to if somebody's done it a couple of years, then they have a little bit more distance and a little bit more ability to share. Julie, you were going to say something. What else?
No, I was just going to say that I think one of the other unique attributes of this particular program, I think in comparison to maybe other programs I've been involved in the past, is that while we frame some expectations of we'd like you to be in contact and have a meeting maybe 3 times in a semester, and then asynchronously kind of figure out, whether you're going to email or message one another, or who might be responsible for setting up meetings, or who's creating an agenda for the meetings. But we don't necessarily prescribe all of that. Like, you must meet about this and you must talk about that, and you must meet within this time frame. We give more general parameters and some suggestions, and I think a lot of it is very organic in terms of the types of experiences that students have. The pair is, the mentor and mentee pair is given a list of kind of expectations to kind of discuss in beginning the mentoring relationship, of how often they might communicate, the types of topics that they might discuss, and those kinds of things. And I think that that has also worked for many of our students, because I think some of them initially can be very nervous or anxious about, what is this mentor for? What is this supposed to be? And they are able to kind of work through that with one another to a point where it's comfortable for both the mentor and the mentee in terms of what that participation looks like. And that may be different for other programs. That's what's worked for us and has been, successful. But like, I think one of the areas that we have made some changes in this past year is really trying to connect more of that mentoring experience along with what their course topics are for a given week, as Tia had mentioned, and giving some more context. So if they're talking about tutoring resources, maybe the mentor might share their experience with tutoring, or some of their favorite study strategies and discussion post strategies and those kinds of things. So, I mean, I think that that's one area that I think our program can be somewhat unique in that it's not as prescribed. Mm-hmm. But definitely, having them recommend and establish kind of those guidelines of what they can expect from one another is a really important starting point. And then we do, as Tia mentioned, have a lot of check-ins to make sure that communication kind of is happening throughout the semester. So we do some like polling and pulse checks, I'd like to call them, with both mentors and mentees. And as Tia mentioned, if there are disconnects there, we make adjustments or even possibly reassignments. And so, these are the things that we've learned in terms of best practices, and happy to kind of answer any questions. I know our contact information is on there if you would like more information, or to talk offline about anything in specific that might be unique to your program. Please do get in touch with us. But I know that this is really meant to be sort of more of an open discussion, so I'm happy to kind of continue on with that part of our session.
And just one last thing I wanted to share is that a lot of this program is modeling this interaction and communication. So Kim, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the ways that you as an instructor help shape how students interact with the mentor. Maybe that'll be a good way to transition into some of our quotations and polls and sort of seeing what the community says.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, one thing that I really wanted to elaborate on that Tia mentioned was, really with the communication. One thing that I think was changed with our last cohort was there's actually a channel in Teams where the instructors can communicate with Tia and Julie and Megan. And I think early on, that really helped facilitate the pairings in terms of who's connecting and who's not connecting. So from an instructor standpoint, and I saw Mandy Biddle somewhere, I think, in the room. She could speak to that as well. But from my perspective, I thought that really was very helpful in getting the students in a timely fashion paired with their mentor, so that they can begin that relationship. So I thought, from my perspective, that discussion board or that Teams channel was really helpful this semester. I don't know if Mandy wants to add to that, because
feel free to jump on, Mandy, if you have any experiences to add. Mandy is another Smart Track instructor, and we have 7 of them. So I asked Kim. I hope it's okay, Mandy, that I didn't ask you, but we could only have so many people on a round table.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, Kim, I agree that the targeting mentor matching was really helpful this semester, and I think it really helped with the relationship building. It didn't take as much time to have that building. It was already there because they had things in common.
I did see, while we're kind of on this, I did see in our Whoova chat that there was a question about who trains the mentors, and I did kind of gloss over that. Our office, the Student Affairs Office, is responsible for training of the mentors, and that the training really takes place in a Canvas module that the students complete independently, and then we do have meetings throughout the semester to talk about with our ambassador team and mentor team to talk about best practices, some challenges. The opportunity with the Canvas module also allows for mentors to learn from other mentors. So sometimes a mentor might share a challenge that they might be having, especially if they're a new mentor, and they might hear from others on the team, or they can also reach out to our team. And we're very specific in terms of the types of questions that our mentors should be responding to. So like they would not necessarily, academic advisors have their role, and our team, our student peers are not, to take on any of that, or financial aid or any of these other kinds of questions, but can refer on, or perhaps flag a student onto the facilitator, or transfer, pass on questions that may come rise to the top or whatnot. But the training modules, primarily give some strategies on best practices for communication, talking about different styles that mentors might take, different roles, whether it's sort of a more coaching, goal-oriented role, or more of a friend kind of friendly mentoring kind of welcome sort of buddy kind of role. And that just gives them sort of a frame of reference of, how they might approach the situation, and then the types of questions that they might have, and then also an overview of some of the resources if they're not familiar with what resources might be, so that they can kind of, share that information with their mentees. Hopefully that answers that question.
I did also see that Carolyn Jensen had a question, and certainly participation in the program is always a question. And at least for the first semester, the scholarship is tied, the second semester of the scholarship is tied to passing the first semester of the program. And passing is literally, did you try 70% of the things we asked you to do? Did you read whatever we asked you to read? Did you put something in the box where we told you to put something in the box, no matter how fully fleshed out it was? So they get credit for things like trying to go to a tutoring session or doing a brainstorm activity. The activities are really meant to align with what they're already doing in their coursework. I did want to reach out about, or I did want to sort of share a little bit about what I'm seeing in our polls. So we asked a question, and hopefully this will sort of inspire further conversation. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time to answer. What are the challenges of establishing a mentoring relationship? Commitment is one that seems to come up in a big scan. Time and money is obviously a huge challenge across the board for first-gen students with their multiple responsibilities and the many things they have to do, as well as our adult learners, whether they're first gen or not, because usually our adult learners are adults. They have working lives, they have families, they have responsibilities that drive them. In the previous session, they were talking about, I just want to get it done. And I certainly can hear that in our students and their needs. I need to get it done. I'm paying for it. I need to get it done so that I can get the promotion at work. I need to get it done. And so getting them to engage in these other things that we're asking them to do can be tricky. I do think, though, that the mentoring piece is one of the really sort of unspoken successes for why we're getting students to engage in something like a non-credit program that doesn't give them financial or sort of credit incentives. And I feel like it's worth it to share with you guys, share with everyone the sort of If I can get my silly computer to cooperate, bear with me. I have to find it. These are the things that our students say. And I just went in and pulled quotes from our student evaluations that we get every semester about mentoring. This is from the fall. So this is how students most recently are seeing what things worked and what things didn't. Some things don't work. Sometimes a student is like, oh, the mentor didn't work. I got busy, we got overwhelmed. But these are the moments where it does work, and it gives you a sense of sort of what our students are getting out of it. And if anybody ever wants to jump in and share anything, we'll open it up in just a second. But I'm not going to read all these quotes, but I really liked this one. Is when I was first assigned a mentor, I wasn't unsure about this and what I could get from one. And now I'm happy to say I feel blessed to get one. It's useful to the students and they recognize it. They make friends, they have a support system. And in a world campus environment where we're online, that's really, really important. Kim, did you want to jump on?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, I just wanted to jump back to something Tia had said, as you know, somebody who's pretty much on the outside of this program, because I see the effects on the students. A couple of things that really came to mind, especially this past year, was the energy during the 2 weeks where the pairings were really taking place. The time that Tia and Julie put in to carefully pairing those students was notably different. You could just feel the excitement and the energy from the students about, how much they had in common with their mentor. And I think, I know that was really time-consuming piece, but I think that was a really important piece. The other thing that really stood out to me with the mentor-mentee relationship is that sometimes, students get resources, lots of resources in Smart Track, but giving a student a resource doesn't necessarily mean they know how to apply that resource. And so what really was a benefit is that, the mentee could go to their mentor and say, I don't know how to use this. And I think Megan gave a perfect example with tutor.com. Sometimes, students maybe didn't have a good experience with a tutor in their, prior academic journeys. And so they're hesitant to do that, but then they talk with their mentor and, find that it's, very helpful. So I think in terms of the resources, the two things that struck out to me was just the pairings were phenomenal this year, this semester, and there was just a lot of energy. So that really paid off, as well as just the mentees were much more comfortable going to their mentor than even we instructors, because I think that hierarchical structure kind of makes them a little bit nervous, right? And so they were really comfortable going to their mentor and asking them about, how do I use this resource? So I think that those were two key elements I've discovered with this particular cohort that I wanted to share.
I do think that applies forward. Thank you for Kim for offering that insight, and this is something that I think applies in an online or in an in-person, that you want to make that effort at the beginning to really build those connections, to model for a student. This is how you send this email. We give them a template, an outline for that sort of initial contact. And at one time it was much more formalized. It was much more of the according to formal mentoring pedagogy, and we've shifted much more to a structure of, who are you? Where do you come from? Why are we're both military veterans. We get along, we understand. And even having that connection of someone who's on the path and farther along is really helpful, because it hopefully reinforces what they're hearing from staff and also tells them where to go. I mean, here you see someone who was inspired by his mentor, who's taking a full course load, looking for time, raising a family. I have 2 kids. I'm so glad I'm done with school. I can't imagine how I would do that in school. So I have a lot of respect for our students. So out of that, I think affinity building is such an important piece of this process. It keeps students committed, keeps students connected. And then here you see sort of the common majors. At this point, we have some questions for you guys, and we're happy to talk about them. We have thoughts that we're perfectly happy to share, But if anyone would like to jump in sort of with how do you see the benefits of learning? How do you support first gen students new to mentoring? This is something I would be really curious to get insights into, is what do other people find effective to build that relationship, to build that connection amongst peer mentors or even professional mentors? I don't know if I can see anybody. If not, you can also respond in the chat and we can also go from there. Challenge not being able to see the chat. So while we're having people decide if they want to get started, I will say that one of the challenges that we've had to deal with over the course of a few semesters is that student connection, that sometimes students are overwhelmed by the number of resources that they're given, the number of people that they can talk to. For our purposes, it's at World Campus especially, we are we're at a distance. So we're trying to get students, they get email after email after email. And so many of the questions that I'm sure Kim and Mandy can attest to is, who's the mentor? What do they do? Are they my advisor? Are they my coach? What is their role? And so I think part of that education is not giving students too big of a network, ironically, that perspective of giving students the people. How do you pull the people out of the university so that you can really make that connection? When you think about your university, you probably don't think about 8,000 people or 40,000 people. You probably remember maybe 50, maybe 100 of teachers, of staff, of students. You only encounter a small fraction of those people. So particularly in an online environment where you're only encountering the people in your classes, helping students to understand that connection to a mentor is a really useful part of the process. In terms of events and activities, I don't know, we don't really have the opportunity to do a lot of those things. As I said, we can't bring pizza or ice cream or the creamery to our events to get people to come. Certainly when I taught in person, that was always a great way to make students come visit.
And Megan, we also certainly have the challenge of time zone issues. So those kinds of synchronous types of events are very difficult. And time zone is another issue for us that we take into account with matching, so that we hopefully can find times when, students that might be, in a completely different time zone, say in, China or Indonesia or somewhere else, that, if we don't find somebody in that same time zone, maybe I've paired folks that work like the night shift and might be getting up, off early in the morning with somebody that might be paired, in China or overseas somewhere. So I think that's one of our challenges that I think may be unique to our World Campus audience, that we do have students all over. But I think, it is something I'd love to try to figure out if there were ways that we could have more kind of synchronous types of events. But, obviously for our students online, much of their activity is done asynchronously.
The last piece that I want to talk about, which is something that can potentially be discussed, is sort of how we evaluate our program success. And in terms of our program success, what we do is, for one thing, we evaluate both, as Tia said, we do pulse checks throughout the semester. And then at the end of the semester, we're always asking students to fill out a survey. What went well? What didn't go well? Unfortunately, the first and most challenging statement that we get is people want their mentors early. And there's only so far that we can do that in advance. Students will be like, it would be great if I met this person before the semester even started. Well, that's great for the student who's getting the mentee, for the mentee, but the mentor may have classes and finals that they're working up. So for one of the ways that we've moved it forward, we've tweaked where it is in the semester. We've tweaked how students connect. The rise of forms and Office 365 connectivity has been very useful in leveraging things like the mentor pairs. I don't remember what we used to do, but certainly we didn't have access to that sort of thing when the program started. So as you're thinking about both how to evaluate, how to establish mentor pairs, thinking through things like how can you use the resources of the university in terms of technology to connect students, but also to do any sort of background work that you need to do to connect a mentor to a mentee can be very helpful. I know you spend a lot of time in Excel, Tia, while you are working on this process. In terms of the content and assignments is a question that I'm seeing from Jenna. I would say that in the non-credit courses, the assignments are generally focused on helping them learn how to do a skill that they should already be working on in their courses. So they're designed, especially the first semester when they have the mentor. The first semester is very focused on, okay, we know midterms are in the middle of the semester or towards the beginning, middle of the semester. So we start talking about how to study for exams several weeks before that. We offer things like, how do you put together a calendar? What is the syllabus? So the topics that are connected to what the mentors are discussing are things that are very concrete in a lot of ways, especially the first semester of Smart Track is very on those really fun. We're trying to get all of our students up to speed on what they need to know to be at that playing field where they can do as well as a student who maybe succeeded in their 2-year degree and is now just moving forward, or a student who is coming back for a second bachelor's degree and already understands how to work in a college environment. So our focus is very much on what is the FAFSA? How do you fill it out? What is the benefit of a growth mindset when it comes to things like STEM and things, those assignments that really give you difficulty? How do you bring a growth mindset to that rather than a closed mindset? So we're thinking through things that are very practical and concrete, and we're thinking about them hopefully in a way that gives students a tied experience to their courses for that. See, I'm trying to see if there's any more questions. The last poll that I created was one that I was just kind of hoping to give everyone sort of a feel-good moment of what, if I can get it to show up well. How does my word cloud work? Bear with me just a second. There's a lot of ways to access everything. So my last question was, what do we see as the benefits? Why do we care? Why are we all here? Is sort of the last sort of question that I had. And so I invited you to make a word cloud. I don't know, is that working? Are you seeing the word cloud? Of the question of what's the benefits of the mentoring relationship? Why do we bother? Why do we put all this effort in? And why do we invite students to participate? Why is this important? It builds that sense of belonging. It gives that role models. It's an experience, it's leadership, it's connection, it's support, it's friendship. So it's all of those things that we hope our students get. We don't go into higher ed to just, for the most part, to convert numbers. Those are the things we talk about. But most of us get into higher ed because we value helping students to learn how to better do these things so that we can retain them. We want them to succeed. Every student who graduates is a student that someone worked with. And so sometimes I think it's important as a person when you're in the weeds of Excel, it can be really helpful to say, okay, well, why are we doing this? And the last thing that I would say is, if you take anything away from our presentation, there's a lot of different ways to do a mentoring program. You can do it with adult learners, you can do it with first gen learners, you can do it with students on different time zones or in the same room. But all of these things, the connections, the go-to person, the learning, the leadership, that is true across the board. And it's worth it and it makes a difference. So the last thing that I would say is, if you're involved in it in any way, shape, or form, if you're thinking about doing it, it's worth it, even if it seems like it doesn't make a difference in the moment, or you're not sure if you've made a great connection. I don't know if anybody else has closing thoughts. We've got just a few minutes.
I'd echo what you said, Megan, and I think the one real value I see of the mentoring program is that students are just really, in many instances, when they're new and when they're first gen and don't have that go-to person, they are more comfortable going to a mentor than perhaps an instructor or maybe their advisor. And so it is a different type of support that can really be invaluable for first gen students who just don't know really how to navigate these complex, university systems. So yeah, I think I agree with you. If you're even thinking of it, you should do it, because there's true value there.
I think it's also very powerful for the mentors themselves to have that experience of sharing their knowledge. So many of them do it because they want to give back. They had somebody that maybe gave to them, or maybe they didn't. And maybe where they were lacking, they want somebody to make somebody else's path that much easier. And I think that is an important takeaway. The number of mentors that we have return is outstanding. And the number of mentees that eventually go on to become mentors is also, I think, a testament a lot of times, because they want to be able to contribute to somebody else's success and feeling of connection and feeling of belonging. And so I think that it makes it very worthwhile, and it makes the types of quotes that Megan shared, while we're going through it and knowing that it's very labor intensive. Sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, why am I doing that? Why am I struggling so hard at this? Why do I care so much? Because when we get that type of feedback, I think, and knowing that is helping these students kind of envision their own success and really continue on and persist and get that degree. I think so many times when I've seen students now, we've had students that have been in the program that have now graduated, and it's exciting to see that, and knowing that, their beginnings were, through a mentoring experience is very powerful and worthwhile.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your program with us. We really enjoyed it. If you are an attendee, I would like to remind you to please, yes, thank you so much, to please fill out the session evaluation form. It can be found in your Hoover agenda, or you can also scroll and click on surveys in the main navigation and just find the session and complete that. So yes, round of applause to our presenters. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.